Chapter 5. Leech and Thira. Inside the tavern, Twit was not in a very good mood. The kobold's claws drummed against the tavern counter, each tap leaving microscopic splinters in the worn wood. "So let me get this straight," he said miserably, peering into Figlin's half-empty mug, as if the answers might be floating among the peachberry dregs. "Our entire clan in Harar is coming tonight." His tail lashed once, violently, knocking over a stool. "Because of one poorly worded message about... what was it again? Strange, glowing pregnancies?" Figlin just sighed. "They know how to take good care of him. They are very good at being healers," he said. "But our cousins are nothing but lousy snobs!" snapped Twit. Figlin's emerald spines rippled in a shrug. "Technically, we did ask for expertise regarding male gelfling gestation anomalies." He tapped the cracked wax seal with one claw. "Cousin Yipnik wrote back that they are bringing specialized equipment." Twit let out a frustrated sigh. "I'm talking about our female cousins, Leech and Thira. Their insults just drive me crazy," he snarled. "I know, brother, but let's try to get through the evening." Twit's pupils immediately constricted into pinpricks. That could mean anything from midwife tools to stolen Skeksis torture implements, he hissed, claws digging fresh furrows into the counter. "We could go to Sanakar village. I hear they make a wonderful pie," Figlin said. Twit shot him a look that would have made even a troll cringe in fright. "Are you out of your mind?" Twit shouted. "That village is on the other side of the endless forest. Plus, there are 10,000 angry, superstitious humans living in that village." Figlin let out a laugh. "Hey, don't bite my head off. I'm just fooling around," he said. The scent of fermented peachberry turned rancid in Twit's throat. Leech and Thira's last healing session had left 3 gelfling villagers bedridden with phantom limb pain, and their uncle Crick with a stump of a tail. His tail lashed against an empty keg. "We need to." The tavern door burst inward with a sound like snapping bone. Twit spun, scales bristling, just as 2 silhouettes, one slender and the other squat and fat, oozed through the threshold, their spines gleaming with freshly polished venom tips. "Darlings," crooned Leech, her copper scales dusted with iridescent powder that made Twit's nose twitch. "Ugh," groaned Twit. She draped herself over Figlin's shoulders, her tail caressing his mug with deliberate slowness. "Still drinking peasant swill, I see." Twit groaned in annoyance. Thira slithered past them both, her claws trailing along the counter until they found Twit's untouched ale. She took a dainty sip before gagging theatrically. "Ugh! Tastes like troll sweat." Her frills flared as she spotted the half-eaten mushroom skewer beside Twit's elbow.
And you're still eating street meat? Pathetic!
Twit snarled and sank lower onto his stool, claws kneading the wood grain. "Just shut up," he growled, pushing his untouched mushroom skewer toward Thira with deliberate slowness. The silence that followed was so absolute that Twit could hear the fermented peachberry bubbles bursting in Leech's abandoned mug. Then came the sound. A wet, deliberate crunch as Thira bit down on the skewer without breaking eye contact. Her frills pulsed once in challenge before she swallowed.
Street meat suits you, cousin,
she murmured, flicking the empty stick into the fireplace. "Don't be rude, Leech. That also goes for you too, Thira. Twit is still family, which means you two will be civil." The voice rolled through the tavern like a rock slide, silencing even the crackling hearth fire. Twit and Figlin's father, Old Grack, stood framed in the doorway, his spines, once rust-red like Twit's, now dulled to mossy gray with age. One clawed hand gripped his gnarled walking staff. The other held up in a gesture that brooked no argument. "And Thira," he added, his lone yellow eye narrowing, "if you throw one more skewer, I'll pin your tail to the floor with this." He tapped the staff's iron-shod tip against the flagstones for emphasis. Old Grack's nostrils flared as he inhaled the tavern's pungent air. Fermented peachberries, charred cave mushrooms, and the underlying musk of cobalt scales that never quite washed out. His lone yellow eyes swept the room before landing on Twit's half-eaten mushroom skewer. With a grunt, he hauled his aged frame onto the stool between his sons with a gentle smile on his face. "I haven't eaten peasant food in many a trine," he admitted, claws tracing a knot in the wooden counter. Then, with deliberate slowness, he reached for Twit's abandoned meal. The mushroom cap burst between his teeth, releasing earthy juices down his chin. "I'm glad you're living well," he murmured, wiping his muzzle with a forearm scaled like weathered bark. "Especially after your unfortunate encounter with the Skeksis in their castle." His eye, sharp as a flint edge, flicked to Twit's twitching tail tip, where 3 vertebrae were permanently fused from old torture wounds. And then at the branding mark on Twit's chest, now nothing more than a scar. Twit's claws flexed against his thighs, the scars along his ribs itching beneath his scales. "It wasn't that bad," he lied through gritted teeth, watching Old Grack devour the rest of his meal with unsettling relish. Figlin just shuddered at the memory of hearing about the torture that Twit endured at the hands of the Skeksis. Old Grack's spine spikes, once venom-tipped like Thira's, were now worn smooth. But his appetite clearly hadn't dimmed, for kobolds were known to have high metabolisms. Twit forced a grin as Grick licked grease from his claws. "Besides, I finally got these out of it." He flashed the stolen Skeksis' signet ring he'd melted into a pauldron clasp, the gold still etched with Skekvile's twisted crest. Old Grack's laughter rumbled like distant thunder as he wiped mushroom grease from his muzzle. "I'm glad to hear that," he said, eyeing Twit's stolen Skeksis pauldron with something between pride and unease. His claw tapped the counter near Twit's ale mug twice, before adding, "Don't worry, son. We won't use the equipment we stole from the Skeksis." A pause. The tavern's hearth light caught the knowing glint of his yellow eye. "At least, not this time." Twit's tail went rigid. Across the table, Figlin choked on his peachberry ale. "Wait, what?" Twit rasped, claws gouging fresh furrows into the wood. The scent of charred mushrooms turned acrid in his throat. Memories of Skekvile's dungeon instruments flashing behind his eyelids. Old Grack's claw tapped the iron-shod tip of his staff against the floor, with a sound like a coffin nail being driven home. "The last time we did," he said, eyes never leaving Twit's twitching tail. "Your Uncle Crick was left with a stump of a tail." The tavern's hearth light caught the jagged scar where Old Grack's own smallest finger used to be. A matching set to Uncle Crick's abbreviated appendage. Thira snorted into her ale. "Uncle Crick was lucky," she muttered, frills flaring as she traced the vicious hook of Leech's stolen Skeksis scalpel. The blade's edge gleamed violet where it had been dipped in darkening residue. "If Mother hadn't cauterized it with superheated metal from the forge at Harar, he would have bled to death." Old Grack's stomach growled like a caged beast as he pushed back from the tavern counter, his iron-shod staff scraping against the flagstones. "Well," he said, licking the last traces of mushroom grease from his claws, "let's go join the Gelflings for dinner at the great oak table. I'm starving." His lone eye gleamed with predatory amusement as Thira gagged into her ale. "What? You'd rather starve than eat with landwalkers?" Twit's ears flattened against his skull. The scent of roasting nebri meat and spiced tuber root had been drifting from the village square for hours, rich enough to make his own stomach clench. But the thought of his cousins loose among the Gelflings made his tail kink like a broken spring. Leech was already pocketing her stolen Skeksis instruments with disturbing enthusiasm. "Just don't touch anything," Twit hissed, hopping off his stool. The wood groaned in relief. Later, they joined the Gelflings at the great oak table in the center of the tavern. The nebri ribs cracked between Leech's teeth, with a sound like snapping twigs. Her copper frills flaring as she surveyed the banquet spread across the great oak table. "Were you too busy helping the peasants to cook us a proper meal?" she sneered, flicking a stray bone onto Twit's plate. Her tail lashed against the bench, stirring the scent of roasted tubers and something acrid, venom glands expressing irritation. Twit's claws dug into the table's weathered grain. "Oh, here it comes," he muttered, tail tip twitching toward the stolen Skeksis scalpel hidden beneath his cloak. Figlin's spines bristled as he reached across the steaming platter of cave mushrooms. "Listen, dear cousin," he began, voice strained with forced patience. "At least show some—"
"Shut your beak, Spindly!"
Leech hissed, flicking a rib bone at Figlin's snout. Her copper frills pulsed with venomous delight.
"I mean, look at this!"
She gestured contemptuously at the earthenware plates, the woven reed napkins, the villagers' homespun tunics.
"You're still living like peasants!"
Twit's tail lashed out, a blur of scaled muscle aimed squarely at Leech's shins. She dodged with a dancer's grace, claws sinking into the bench as she leaned back.
Are you trying to smack me with your tail?"
she purred, pupils contracting to venomous slits. Twit bared his needled teeth in a grin. "So what if I am?" Twit hissed. "Uh-oh," old Grax said, as he dove under the table. Leech's frills flared.
"Well, if you're going to be juvenile, then I will too!"
With a flick of her wrist, the entire honey-glazed pie, still steaming from the oven, launched from the table and splattered across Twit's snout with a wet splat. Figlin groaned as sticky filling oozed between Twit's bristling spines. Twit rose slowly, dripping from his twitching whiskers. His claws sank into the oak table, leaving fresh gouges, as his blood began to boil with rage. "Figlin is my witness," he growled through clenched teeth, tail lashing like a whip. "You started it!" The Gelflings and the entire clan of Harar kobolds watched in amusement as Twit and Leech broke into a full-blown food fight, flinging anything within reach at each other. A roasted tuber root soared through the air, hitting Twit square between the eyes with a satisfying thunk. "Maybe now you'll bathe," Leech screeched, her copper frills flaring as she hurled a handful of mashed cave fungus at him. Twit then grabbed a pie and said, "I'll make you eat those words!" But no sooner as he said those words than Leech grabbed another sticky glob of mashed cave fungus and threw it at him. Twit ducked, barely, as the sticky glob sailed past his ear and splattered across old Grax's chest with a wet slap. The elder kobold didn't even blink, merely licking a dollop of fungus from his claws with disturbing relish as the battle erupted around him. A roasted nebri rib bounced off Twit's skull with a hollow thunk as the pie he threw missed Leech's scaly head.
"Ha! Still slow as ever,"
Leech crowed, already loading her claws with honey-glazed tubers. Twit responded by upending an entire tureen of spiced broth over her head. The scalding liquid made doubly effective by Thira's stolen Skeksis scalpel, clattering to the floor mid-dodge. Leech came up spluttering, her venom-tipped spines dripping with thyme and rosemary. "Oh, now you've done it, Landwalker lover!" Rian blinked as a stray mushroom ricocheted off his ear, splattering against the tavern wall behind him with a wet plop. He turned slowly to see Figlin's emerald spines flattened against his skull in resignation. the kobold's claws gripping his ale mug like it was the only anchor in a storm. "Do you see what Dad and I have to put up with every time Leech and Thira show up?" Figlin muttered, ducking just in time to avoid a flying honey cake. "I see your point," Rian said. The gelfling opened his mouth, then promptly closed it, as a roasted tuber root sailed past his nose. Across the table, old Grack was methodically licking spiced broth from his forearm scales, while Leech grabbed a bottle of peachberry juice. "Oh, no. No. Twit's claws scrambled against the table as Leech's fingers tightened around the bottle of peachberry juice, her frills opening in delight. His protests were cut short as she flicked the cork off with her thumb and upended the entire contents into his face. The juice hit his eyes like liquid fire. Then Twit let out a squeal of pain. "Ah!" Twit's scream shredded the air as the peachberry juice stung his eyes. "Mercy, I give!" Twit's claws scrabbled at his burning eyelids as the peachberry juice seared into his tear ducts. His tail lashed wildly, knocking over 3 ale mugs and a basket of bread rolls. Somewhere through the acidic haze, Leech's laughter rang like shattering glass. "The old peachberry juice in the eyes trick," she purred, twirling the empty bottle between her claws. "Never fails." Her frills pulsed with vindictive delight as Twit crashed into the water barrel, plunging his entire head into the icy depths. "It was the grainy kind, too!" His muffled scream bubbled through the water, sending villagers scrambling backward as his flailing tail upended a bench. "Ow! That stings!" Figlin sighed, rubbing the bridge of his snout as Twit emerged dripping, his scales plastered with juice and his eyes swollen nearly shut. The kobold's pupils darted between Leech's smug grin and Twit's twitching claws, already curling around the handle of a serving spoon. "Brother," he began, voice strained with forced patience, "perhaps we should—" Twit slammed his spoon onto the table with a clatter that silenced even Leech's crowing laughter. "I'm going to bed," he announced, voice dripping with the kind of venom that suggested bed might involve strangling his pillow, while imagining it was Leech's throat. His scales still dripped peachberry juice onto the tavern floorboards, each drop sizzling slightly from residual acidity. Figlin opened his mouth, probably to suggest a cold compress, but Twit was already stomping toward the stairs, his tail leaving a sticky red trail behind him. Halfway up, he paused just long enough to snarl over his shoulder. "And if anyone follows me, I'm throwing them out the window, including you, dear cousin!" And with that, he vanished into the shadows of the upper floor.
With the kobold kicked the door in, Figlin already halfway through a stew says, "Little brother, how's the mountain? How's hurrah holding up without me and you?" Twit drops his pack, dust and drama. Clan's alive, but still calling you a toad upgraded. Twit groans and shudders. Now I'm greasing a collapsing road. Thira says my nose is tragic, like a cursed potato with regrets. Says my brain's a rusty wagon, dragged by two confused, offended pets. Oh, the clan back home in a roar makes a madhouse look polite. We ran off to stone in the wood just to get some quiet, but Leech and Thira haunt me like a badly written curse. Every clever jab they throw, I file it in my brain and rehearse. Why do I do that? At least they talk to you, Figgle and Snickers. They just glare and whisper when I walk by. Twit says, swap you 3 of Thira's zingers for one day where they don't roast my height. Figlin stands on a chair